My name is Henry Mason, and I'm here to talk about some of the consumer trends that we're seeing might give you guys some opportunities in the future. When you say you're from a company called Trend Watching, people kind of think, well, you must do, be a fashion trend watcher, and then they kind of look at me and realize I'm in this standard presentation uniform of blazer and shirt and got little black glasses. But, they realize pretty quickly that this is not me. Or they think we spend our days on the internet looking at what's trending on YouTube, and again, while that gives me a nice excuse to put a dirty picture up and make sure I've got everyone's attention at the beginning of the session, disappointingly, that's not all we do every day. So if that's not what we're talking about when we talk about trends, what are we talking about? Because for us, there are really three types of trends that business people should be aware of. Right, on the left there, you've got your macro trends, right? The big geopolitical, geoeconomic forces that you hope your CEO and board are looking out for. On the right, you've got your industry trends, right? What's happening in the retail industry, what's happening in the fashion industry, right? Stuff that you guys, I'm sure, spend a lot of time thinking about. But in the middle there, you've got your consumer trends, right? Often overlooked. How are consumer behaviors, how are consumer expectations changing, right? And that's what we focus on. And at Trend Watching, we pull these insights together in a free newsletter that we send out once a month. You can all go sign up online for free. And we also have a paid service, but I'm not going to talk about that anymore. And when we're looking for trends, right, we rely on, we have a network of about 2,500 spotters around the world who we ask to send us things that they see in their daily lives. It could be interesting ad campaigns, could be new startups, or new products and services from existing businesses. And what we're looking for in these examples, these innovation examples, is manifestations of something that has unlocked or newly serviced an existing consumer need, desire, want, or value. But at the heart of that idea, right, is this notion that, yes, things change, right? Economic circumstances change, new technologies emerge, right? But set against this notion of change, also, as consumers, as people, we have certain quite basic, quite fundamental, pretty stable, basic, fundamental human needs, desires, wants, and values, right? So we're talking there about things like the search for social status, the desire for entertainment, right? The desire for equity, the desire for justice, the desire to appear a good person, a successful person. These basic, fundamental human needs, desires, wants, and values. Desire for convenience, all things like this, right? They're not rocket science. But what happens, of course, is when the things that change bump up against these basic, fundamental, universal needs, desires, wants, and values, right, you can often get these expectation gaps. Right? And what we see again and again is those businesses that really excite consumers, that start to delight consumers, are those businesses that challenge and bridge those expectation gaps. Right? So we've got brands like Tesla redefining the notion of a sports car. Right? Yeah, you can still cruise down the motorway at 100 miles an hour, but you don't look like such a dick about it because you're not killing the planet. Right? Or you've got Airbnb, right? As you're walking down the street, any room there could be your hotel room, right? Redefining the expectation around what a hotel is and could be. We've got Nest, right? Redefining, again, the expectation of what a home appliance could be, right? It's not just a smoke alarm, it's a beautiful object that talks to you and keeps you safe, right? Or, bringing it back to e-commerce and marketing, brands that are redefining the expectations of how businesses and brands communicate with their customers. And I'm sure many of you saw this. This was last year. Patagonia in the US on Black Friday, so the busiest shopping day of the year, sent this to all of their email subscribers. Don't buy this jacket. You already have loads of stuff from us. Can you not reuse it? Can you not repair it? Can you not resell it? Can you buy it on eBay? And the wider point here is when we think about expectations, consumers now exist in what we've been calling this expectation economy. Right? And as Richard said, you have hyper-aware, hyper-informed consumers coming into the store knowing as much about, if not more than, some of the shop assistants. But if you actually pull this out a bit further and think about it, what's happening is that no matter what purchase they're thinking about, consumers have the highest expectations. They expect the best of the best in every purchase, right? The best design, the best customer service, the best experience. You know, there you've got the consumer getting in the BMW, doesn't look at their in-car entertainment system and compare it to Mercedes-Benz, right? And go, well done, BMW, you've made it a little bit better than your competitor, you know, your industry competitor. No, they look at it and they compare it to their iPhone, their iPad. They want to know, why is that in-car entertainment system not as well designed, not as easy to use as the other devices they have? So the question I'd ask you to think about is, you know, look outside of your industry silo and think about who you're really competing against. Where are consumer expectations being set? So the key thought for today, if you remember one thing, and we haven't even got to the trends yet, but if you remember one thing from today, it's this idea that what I'm going to show you today is a few trends which we think provide interesting opportunities. A number of examples, right? I selected, curated examples of some best practice. And the point of these examples, right, is to think about how will you take these examples? How will you learn from them? And how can you adapt them? How can you adapt the ideas within these examples and deploy them for your customers, right? And so to help you with this, and we'll come back, I'll show these slides a couple of times in the presentation because I think they're the most important slides in the whole deck, is when you're thinking about where to apply trends, you can use this framework, right? Are you going to apply it at the level of a vision, right? Think about Tesla. They're, you know, taking a big trend and applying it to shape their whole business. Is it going to be a new business concept, right? Like Airbnb. Is it a whole new business model unlocked by these trends? Or perhaps more, you know, achievable more quickly to roll out? What about new products, services, and experiences, right? Like the Nest Protect. What new products and services could you launch from this? Or at the bottom there, you know, perhaps the easiest one to communicate, quickest to roll out, how could you build some of these trends and examples into your marketing or advertising and PR like Patagonia did? And of course, the other dimension of thinking about where you can apply trends and how you can apply them is to think about who you're applying them for, right? Some of these examples will be, at the moment, only used by niche groups, right? Fringe groups, fringe consumers. So think about what changes would you have to make to extend them from, you know, the happy families, or from the hipsters to the happy families, right? You know, how could you change these innovations? How could you take these trends, adapt them, run with them for your customers? Just a quick note on kind of copying and inspiration before we get into the examples. And I don't want to get into the detail of, you know, Apple and Samsung and patent debates, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing is a really nice idea here about, you know, good copying and bad copying. And I was doing an event in China last year, and this woman came up to me afterwards, and, you know, I'd put on my best British accent, and I thought, this is great, you know. And she said, "You Americans, you're so worried about copying." But she had a great point. She said, you know, in China, we don't worry about copyright. We worry about copying right. And, you know, the heart of this example is the idea. You know, I don't want to get into hot water here, but this example on the right, you've all seen it, right? The Tesco's example of a shopping, you know, by QR code on the metro platform in South Korea. We see this still being used, you know, by eBay last year when they were launching their 1-hour delivery service in New York. You know, how did they choose to promote this? They set up these pop-up stores where, you know, there were windows, you could scan the QR code and get, you know, your item delivered in 1 hour to your address in New York. So same idea, adapted, obviously, changed for their customer base, changed for the campaign that they wanted to run. But again, it's the same idea. So think about how you could take some of these ideas and, again, as I said, adapt them for your customers and in different ways. And, you know, just another note on copying again, if I'd stood up here in 2005 and presented Zipcar to you, you know, you might have thought, well, great, you know, there's a few hundred people renting a couple of cars by the hour, you know, this is really niche, right? But now we see 5, 6, 7 years later, we see BMW, you know, established automotive brand. Their whole brand was built around, you know, exclusivity, the primacy of driving, the driving experience. Now they're launching electric car sharing in San Francisco, where you can rent the car by the minute, not even the hour, and drop it off wherever you want. So, you know, think about how, yes, some of these examples might seem very niche, might seem very fringe, but think about how you could learn from them in bigger businesses and deploy them for your customers. So, we get on to the trends. So what I've done is trying to pick out 4 trends which I really hope, as I said, give you guys some tangible, actionable material. What I want you to do is look at these trends, think about which example, which trend really resonates with you, which ones are you going to go back and tell your teams about and say, what are we doing something with this? Why are we not doing something similar to these guys? So the first trend here, right, we know that consumers love technology, right? They continue to rush towards mobile, rush towards tablets, but think about why consumers love technology so much. Right, because if you think about trends being based in satisfying these fundamental, basic, universal human needs, what technology does is it offers ways to service these existing needs more efficiently and just better. Right? Think about online consumers. A digital consumer is basically a super consumer. All of those basic needs that you have for information, for transparency, for control, for relevance, all of those basic needs are supercharged in the digital space. And just as an aside, I thought it was very interesting. If you compare Her to Minority Report, maybe a film about the future of technology 10 years ago, then it was all about the technology. It was all about interaction with the technology. You look at Her, it's a film about the future of technology, but actually technology is relegated to an invisible presence, right? So it's not, of course, about the technology for consumers. It's about what you can do with it. It's about how will it give you those superpowers. So one of the trends that we continue to look at here when we think about basic fundamental human needs, how is technology fueling these, is this trend that we've called point and know. And this is really grounded in the idea that consumers' information expectations have been set online. Right? Consumers now expect to be able to find out anything about anything instantly. Right? You go to Google, you type whatever you want into that little white box, and you get your information back. But of course, what happens when that information expectation is transferred to the mobile phone? When consumers expect to be able to find out anything about anything instantly in the real world. Right? And you see examples of innovations that try and satisfy this information instant gratification. So here you've got L'Oreal. They launched an app where you could take a photo of what you're wearing, and it would scan that and match it and suggest recommended lipsticks to go with your outfit. Right? So you don't even have to really know what it is you're searching for. You can just take a photo, and it will provide you relevant information based on that image. But if you take it one step further, think about satisfying that information instant gratification, not just by providing information, but also providing the ability to purchase, right? So consumers can point their device at anything and not just be informed about it, but also purchase from it. And we see a couple of examples of this. The Net-a-Porter magazine, it's not just the physical magazine, but also you can point your phone at the objects in the magazine, it scans them, and it takes you to the product page. Right, so bridging the gap between the real world and the physical world. Or The Fancy, the online curation site, they released a Google Glass app where you can you press a button, it processes what you're looking at, and it scans and shows you relevant matching objects available for purchase. And again, we've seen a couple of these prototypes coming out. Glassion here, again, a Google Glass prototype, so as you're walking around, you can take a photo of what you're seeing, it scans it and matches with suggested products that you can buy. Virgin Atlantic, also deploying Google Glass, so it's not just about point, know, and buy, but think about point, know, and serve. So equipping their staff in the first-class lounge so that when passengers walk in, they come and the sales staff have information about those passengers. But the point, right, is not really, as we said when looking at Her, it's not really about the technology. I'm not suggesting you rush out and create Google Glass apps. The point and the question that I would ask you guys to ask yourselves or your teams is, how will you satisfy your customers' instant, real-world information gratification? Right? Think about those expectations about having access to information that were set online by Google and their little white box are now being transferred to the real world. So wherever consumers are, they will expect to have relevant, personal, useful, potentially shoppable information. The next trend I want to share with you guys is this trend for video valets. the idea that customers will increasingly come to expect instant, webcam-enabled FaceTime with brand representatives as and when they need it. And just a short bit of data on this, the study last year said that 54% of UK shoppers said that the most important factor when contacting a brand is being able to speak and interact to a real person. Right? And again, looking at how expectations are being set, we see this start to crop up in a number of different industries. So last year, Bank of America in the US embedded into some of their ATMs a function where, you know, if you got stuck or you wanted additional service, you could press a button and be instantly connected via video to a representative. And I'm sure you've all seen Amazon, the Mayday button on their Kindle Fire, right? So you have a problem with your tablet, you just press a button and instantly you're connected to a representative from Amazon. Think about how that changes consumers' expectations around customer service, right? Online and offline. And, you know, we're seeing that other brands deploy this in interesting ways. Right? This is just a fun example from Fiat in Brazil. But what they did is they actually had, so visitors to the website could actually take a kind of virtual look around the car and they equipped some of their representatives with kind of head cams, and they would actually climb into the car and look around, and you could talk to them while they were looking around the car. So yeah, that's a fun example, right? It's probably not going to reshape their business, let's be honest, but again, think about how, you know, the consumer expectations around how to interact with a brand online are being set by some of these initiatives. And again, I'd urge you guys to think back to these slides, think about how and where you could deploy this. Marketing campaigns, new product services, or how could you adapt some of these initiatives for your customers? So the next trend, I couldn't give a presentation on trends and not talk about, you know, 3D printing and instant manufacturing. Of course, it's a buzzword. Again, is it going to reshape the retail landscape tomorrow? No. But again, I just wanted to share a few examples with you of how brands can innovate around creating, allowing customers to create not just content, as we've discussed, but also actual physical real-world products. Because think about one of the best ways to bring consumers back into the stores is going to be actually allowing them to physically create the products and services that you're selling. And of course, this again is driven by shifts in expectations that have started online. So we see here a really interesting stat from the BBC last year. Between 2006 and 2012, the proportion of people creating content online rose from less than 10 to over 75. And of course now it's going to be even higher than that. So again, think about what that does. If we think about trends always being about, you know, these expectation gaps, these shifts in what consumers expect, this expectation of being a participant, expectation of production that is being set online is now being transferred into the real-world retail experience. And again, a few examples here. So this was installed in a university, the University of Berkeley last year in the US. It was a 3D printing vending machine. So you could upload your designs, you could send your designs to the vending machine, it would give you a time slot, and you would wander over and it would print and drop into one of the lockers, and you could go and collect it. But again, we're seeing people already deploying this in stores in interesting ways. So just over in Box Park last year, there was a custom T-shirt store where you could go, they had touchscreens on the wall, you could create your T-shirt design there and then, kind of online, and print it out, have it while you wait, and buy the T-shirt. Over in New York, a similar retail store that was called Lip Lab, and this was again where you could go and they had the machines, they had the consultants, and with the retail consultant you could actually create your own blended lipstick, create your own color, and it was made while you wait. So again, think about how these consumer expectations around being involved with the production and manufacture of the products are being transferred from the online world into the offline world. And the final trend I want to look at here today is a trend that we've called honest flexibility. And this is a bit of a different trend. So this is much more of a marketing trend, much more of a communications trend. And this is really the idea. We've been tracking this trend towards kind of human branding and greater transparency in communications for a number of years. And we started to see some really interesting examples of how businesses were not just being honest and open and transparent with their customers, but also kind of being accommodating and accepting the limits of their product and service and actually confronting them head on and saying to customers, we know you know what the limitations of our products and service are, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to help you resolve them. Very, very honest, very upfront, very transparent. And if that all sounds very abstract, just again, zooming back to the data, right? Thinking about expectation gaps and thinking about how trends often arise from expectation gaps. So we see the data here, 49% of customers think it's important or very important for brands to listen and respond thoughtfully. I'm not quite sure what the other 50% of customers think. They don't think that's important at all. But the key point of this stat is not the 49%, it's the fact that only 10% of customers think brands do this well. So there's this massive expectation gap between where customers want brands to be and where they think they are. And here we have some examples of brands that are going out of their way to, as we said, try and bridge this expectation gap. Try and say to customers, yes, these are the limitations that you see, and this is what we're going to do about them. And if this all seems very abstract, then hopefully these examples will bring it to life a little bit. So here we have an example of a hotel in Australia. And what they did is they had this overstay campaign where they said, we know you're annoyed if you have to check out when no one's going to be using your room for the rest of the day. Why do we make you check out at 11? So what we're going to do is, if no one's using your room, if no one's booked in, we'll let you stay as long as you want. Could be till 6. It could be, until we next need it. Could be another free night. It could be a week if no one's checking in to that hotel room. So that's just a fun marketing example. But again, think about how this could be deployed in other ways. We have here BMW launching an initiative for people that had bought their new electric car. They said, okay, we know that maybe you have range anxiety. Maybe you're worried about, for the 2 times a year when you have to take a really long trip, you're worried that you're going to run out of power. So we will let you rent, we will provide a normal car, we will rent you a normal car for free whenever you want, right, on request. We will deliver it to you, and you don't have to worry about this anymore. So again, it's confronting the limits of your product or service head on and saying to customers, we understand them and here's what we're going to do to overcome them. And the final example here is an e-commerce example, and this was Rent the Runway, who I'm sure you've all heard of. Over in New York, they rent designer dresses, so you can wear a $5,000 dress and only pay a couple of $100s just for the night that you need it. And what they said is, yeah, we know that A, that takes time, you have to plan ahead, and B, you maybe won't get the size that you want. They were finding a lot of people were renting 5 versions of the same dress, 5 different sizes of the same dress to make sure they got the right one. So they opened a physical store in New York, and they said, not only can you come and pick something up to take away there and then, but also we will measure you and we'll store your measurements so that when you make future online rentals, we'll be able to tell you that you are actually choosing the right dress, for your size, and it's going to fit you correctly. So again, it's confronting the limitations of the online model head on and saying this is what we're going to do about it. Very honest, very transparent, very human. Phew. So that was 4 trends, lots of examples. As I said, I hope that you guys can go back with at least 1 or 2 tangible examples, 1 or 2 tangible, practical, actionable strategies that you can say to your team, again, why are we not doing something with this trend? What could we do to help improve our service, new products for our customers? And as we said, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Of course, there are hundreds of trends, hundreds of examples I could have shown here today. And perhaps you're sitting there thinking, yeah, some of these, they're nice, they're interesting, but maybe they're not for me. While I was researching this presentation, I came across this quote this was the CEO of Blockbuster in 2008, when he was asked about Netflix. He said, yeah, DVDs, they're a glacier. Yes, we know they're melting, but it's a very slow melt, right? We're going to be in this business for a long while. So I'm kind of guessing maybe he regretted saying that, because these changes, once consumers expect something, once their attitudes change, they move very, very quickly. So yes, some of these things are niche right now, but what I want you to do is think about how could you apply some of these innovations, as we said, on these 4 levels: new products, new services, new campaigns, perhaps even new business models. How could they shape your vision? Or alternatively, how could you deploy them for different customer groups? How could you move them from one demographic into another demographic? And we actually have a free worksheet online if you want to actually work through this step by step. I mean, basically, I've been summarizing this worksheet as we go along. The key thoughts behind it are: identify what is changing. What are the new technologies? What are the new economic circumstances? What are the new expectations for consumers? What's changed? What hasn't changed? What are the fundamental, universal human needs? Where's the entertainment? Where's the convenience? Where's the personalization? Where's the relevance? These basic fundamental human needs. And how can you identify and then, most importantly, look to bridge those expectation gaps? Because if you target them, if you satisfy these expectation gaps for consumers, both current and future, then I think the future will be bright. And if you do that, have a good time. Thank you very much, and good luck.